Okay, today we're doing something very unique. I'm going to look at all of Marvel's most successful titles of the 1960s Silver Age. But we're going to look at the lowest graded, lowest census copies, I should say, on the CGC census. The lowest amount. These would be considered the least demanded issues, not major keys at all. But what we're going to do as an interesting test is look at the GP analysis of all graded copies sold and see if, in a sense, the worst issues of these popular titles are still in good investments long term. If these ones are good, then I think we'll learn a few interesting things about the popularity of these titles in general. So let's start off with the granddaddy of them all, Fantastic Four. The lowest on the census of any 60s issue is number 90. So looking at the GP analysis, let's look at a couple different grades just as samples. Let's look at a really high grade, 9.6. So here is the GP analysis looking at all the sales over the last 23 years, all CGC copies. And you can see, it's dipped here a little bit, but it actually stayed pretty steady over COVID. Not a lot of sales. Over the last 10 years, there has only been 7 sales. And we can see that pre-COVID, the average sale was $5.80. It's currently, the recent sales average $3.95. This book not only has not gone up, it hasn't even stayed the same. This has been a bad investment, even using pre-COVID eras. Now, 2014 makes a totally different story. You can see in the last 12 years, it's gone up from $2.90. So again, when you bought, when you sell, makes a big difference. Well, let's look at a low-grade copy of this book, just to make some comparisons. And not a lot of low-grade sales, because of course this is a fairly cheap book. Let's look at a 5.0. And look at that. One sale ever of a 5.0, $24. We have no comparison on that one. Let's look at a 5.5 quickly. Few sales of this one. 8 sales in total. Predictably, you can see the book went up during COVID. Last 10 years, again, 8 sales. You can see it went from 21 to 61. So over that time period, this book has tripled in low grade, but in super high grade, it fell $100. So again, interest in where price ranges are. A lot of people say, you can only make money investing in 9.8s. But the reality is, I find that so not true for older books, especially when there might be more sales for low grade. And of course, they're more affordable. Not everybody can afford a 9.6, but everyone might want to get a low grade copy in their collection. So there you go. That's Fantastic Four. Let's jump to another title. Journey into Mystery. 91 is the lowest on the census. It's a Stanley issue. 322 copies on the census. So there is definitely demand. And this is still early on in the run of the book. As you may know, Thor had just taken over the title the year before. So this is still a fairly early Thor issue. Let's do some comparisons. So we can see that there have not been any recent sales at all for any high-grade copies of this book. Just none at all. I have to go down the list quite a bit. Let's look at an 8.0. 19 different sales over the last 20 years. Again, a big boom during COVID. Definitely on a dip down. The question is it higher than it was 10 years ago? So using 2017, perhaps, $400, it's up to $506 average. So this book's gone up $100 in 10 years. You can decide if that was a good profit margin or not. That's definitely not doubling. So I would say for a 10-year period, really this is not good investment. Sure, it went up, but that's not really enough to brag that you invested well in a copy of this grade. Let's pick a lower grade. We'll look at a 5.0 of this one. 17 sales of this book. Again, peak at COVID, predictably. But look at this one. This one actually is sitting quite nice and high compared to pre-code prices. So you can see it's gone from 125 to 251 in 10 years. It is exactly doubled on the average price for this grade. So that just gives you, again, an idea of where we're at. Okay, well, let's look at another title. Strange Tales 142 from 1966. No recent sales at all for any super high grade copies until we get to a 9.2. So let's take a look there. 9.2s overall. There's been 14 sales over 20 years. So again, these are all pretty scarce actually in these grades. That's selling less than one a year on average. Looking at the 10-year period, we'll use 2013, $83, now at $140. So that's a 12-year period, and it hasn't quite doubled. So even though this is a high-grade book, but it's not really a major key, again, not really good investment. Sure, it has gone up, but nothing to brag. Notice prices really were low the decade before that. All right, and let's pick a lower grade of this book to do some comparisons. Not a lot of sales. Let's try a 6. 6.0, there's been only 9 sales. And 10 years ago, it was 35 on average. Now it's 49. So that book, again, has not even come close to doubling. So again, investment-wise, it's gone up a teeny bit. But for a 10-year-old on a book like this, you're making like $1 a year. Not a good investment. Okay, let's pick another one. Tales to Astonish 71, 1965. Again, no super high sales until we get to 9.4s. So let's take a look at those. There's been a few sales. 21 sales in the history. And again, COVID boom. Oh, but look at this book. Has had a surprising spike just recently. So in the last 10 years, you can see in 2015 it was 204. Now it's at 512. So based on that criteria, this book has more than doubled. It's gone 2.5 times up in the last 11 years. And we do have a few sales each year. Still fairly scarce, not a lot of copies to pick from. So if you really want this, you got to dive in. And again, this was high grade, 9.4. Well, let's see if low grades also did the same thing for this book. I'm going to use 4.0. Only 3 sales in 20 years. And they're all fairly recent. But wow, look at just the little dip we've had recently. Unbelievable. But in 2023, there was a $100 sale and then followed up with a $22 sale. So, you lost your shirt if you're basing it on those numbers. We don't have any sales pre-COVID, but it would definitely be less than 50. So, if you're lucky, you broke even with that $22 sale. But you probably did lose. So, this has not been as popular as the high grade. Let's look at Tales of Suspense, number 70. That is the lowest issue of that title on the CGC census of any 60s issue. Looking on the GP analysis sales, we can see that there have been no recent sales for any super high grade copies until we get to a 9.4. So let's look at that. Do some comparisons. 19 copies sold in total. So that's roughly 1 a year for the last 20 years. Looking at just the last 10 years alone, 2015, it was 215. Now the average is 312. So the book has gone up about 50% in 10 years. Not really a good investment. Again, you're only making a small profit per year for that time run. Let's look at a low grade copy and do some comparisons. Let's look at a 5.0. Again, nice growth before COVID, but a big drop recently again. So using 2014, $45 average, now $17 average. Really big drops. So this one, you've lost your money unless you've been sitting on this book for 15 years, or of course, if you had sold at the peak of COVID, 2021, 2022. Incredible Hulk, 121, 1969, lowest graded issue of the 60s issues. Let's look at 9.4 since we have a few to compare. 28 sales. Lots of sales in 2025. This book's actually been increasing in the last year. Could we actually have a winner here? Yes, we do. So if you look at the last 10 years for long-term investing, 2016 it was 142 average. Currently, there was a $390 sale. That is a record sale since COVID. This one, for whatever reason, has really had a bump up. Could be a fluky one sale, but if that was your sale, you more than doubled your money. So this one actually has been a better investment out of what we've looked at so far today. Let's find a lower sale. There have not been many lately. Let's try a 5.5. Only 4 sales ever in this grade of a graded copy. And you can see not a lot of movement. This is a very cheap book, even graded. So it's even amazing people have slabbed copies of this book because it's not really a profitable book. Pre-COVID, it was $21. It went up. It's fallen back to $33. So it is up about 50% just from pre-COVID, but we're only talking a profit of basically $1 a year. So not really a good investment on that one. Out of all the Amazing Spider-Man titles, they sell so well. So the lowest on the CGC census with 491 copies is Annual number 6 from 1969. We had a recent $4,000 sale of a 9.8. Let's see if there have been other sales. We have a few. 6 9.8s have sold over the years. So it's actually slowly climbing up, even higher now than COVID years. But it is a 9.8, so demand stays high. If you'd bought the book in 2016, it was a $3,000 book. It's now at $4,000. Technically, you did make $1,000, so that's a nice profit. But percentage-wise, the book only went up 50%, so that hasn't even come close to doubling in 10 years. So percentage-wise, still not really a good investment. Tying up a lot of money for a possible win. Let's pick a lower grade copy. Not a lot of recent sales. Let's look at a 5.5. 10 copies have sold in this grade. Definite peak at COVID, and then it's really dropped. So it's higher than where it was 15 years ago. It's doubled since 2011. That's 15 years, though, just to double. But it's definitely been on a drop continuously since COVID. Only one recent sale, quite low. So again, not really good investment based on that time period. X-Men 46, 1968. And 9.8 has not sold since 2012. Let's look at 9.4s to do some comparisons for investment. Lots of ups and downs with this book. 28 copies have sold. Lots of demand for this popular title. This is the lowest on the census, so this is a minor book in the run. Looking at the last 10 years, did we make money? 2016, it was $325 on average. It peaked in 2023. It's been dropping every year since. It's currently at $403, so we're up about $80. Is that a good investment? Definitely not at this point, based on those years. Now, again, if you had sold at the peak of COVID, you actually could have not doubled your money, but you could have done quite well in just a 5-year period. But now, post-COVID, it's still on its way down at the moment. And let's look at a lower grade copy for comparison. 4.5. Now, this is the opposite. Look at this trend. It's been going up since COVID. Looking at the 10-year period, we can see it went from 29. It's currently a recent sale for 79. So that 2.5 times for a low-grade copy. Being more affordable, it's had room for growth. So the high grade did okay. The low grade did better percentage-wise. Daredevil 55, 1969. There has not been a 9.8 sale since 2012. But if we look at 9.4s, we've had some recent sales. So let's look at that for comparison. This book actually had a huge peak way before COVID, interestingly. It actually was falling at COVID time and has been up and down a lot. A lot of hype around the Daredevil TV show. Looking at a 10-year period, 2015, it was 668. It would peak at 825 in 2017. COVID, it went back up to 482. Then it would drop drastically, jumped back up drastically, has fallen back drastically. This is a roller coaster book. So currently at 317, 2015, 668. It's actually at only about 45% of the value it had 10 years ago. So if you were trying to sell right now, this is a terrible time to buy. This potentially could be a great time to buy this book. And let's check a lower grade just to see if we see the same trend. Let's look at 6.5 because there's a recent sale. Flatline, only 3 sales, all since COVID. So we really don't have a big comparison here, but what I can say is it's definitely down. One recent sale, really cheap, $15. So with the stats we have, terrible investment probably in the last 10 years. We don't know what it would have sold for 10 years ago, but realistically it was probably higher than $15. Next on our list, we're going to look at Thor 170 from 1969. No sales of a 9.8 since 2014. We're going to look at 9.4s. There's a more recent sale. And look at this book. This book has steadily overall been increasing, even with COVID. 25 sales of this grade. This year we've already had 2 sales. So 2016, 10 years ago, we're looking at 129. It's up to 267. This book has doubled in that 10-year period, so that's okay. Not huge profit maker investment-wise, but doubling your money in 10 years. We're happy with that. The book peaked in 2022, but it's actually at its highest sale this year. So definite interest right now in this book. And we'll pick a lower grade also as a comparison. A 6.5 had a recent sale. And we're seeing the opposite. This has not been a good investment. Only a few sales though. They're all since COVID. But the most recent sale was only at half of where it was 5 years ago. With only 1 sale, that's all the data we have. No earlier sales at all. So not a good investment based on the last 10 years. Let's look at Marvel Tales 23, 1969. Now this one's going to be interesting. So Marvel Tales is what we call a reprint series. So usually way less demand because it's just reprinting older issue stories again. And we have no recent sales at all of pretty well any grade. So the most recent sale we have for a book like this, 2023 for a 6.5. 1 sale. Let's look at the 9.6s just to see if we have any more variety. So at least in 9.6s, just 1 sale again. And look at that, it's almost a decade ago. So this book, again, being so low demand, there are a few copies graded. In fact, what did I say? There's 22 copies graded, but just such low demand, even though this is a 60s Marvel title, very few sales because of so few being graded. So we can't really make any judgments on this. And let's look at one more title that was long running for Marvel in the 60s. Fantasy Masterpieces number 10. This was another reprint series, but there is a recent sale of a 9.6, so we can do a little bit of a comparison here. Only 3 sales in the last 20 years, but luckily 2 sales recently in 2024, and they are higher than the pre-code price of $195. So up over $100. So that's good news for this book, but it is fairly high grade. And again, not too many copies graded. But good news, it's up about 50%. Still not good percentage profit-wise, but it has gone up. And I'll just quickly see if there have been any lower grade sales to even bother talking about. But not really. We'll just quickly look at a 6.5, see if there's more than one sale. We have 2 sales, 15 years apart, going from 11 to 18. So that's going up less than $1 a year. So while, yes, it did go up, nothing to write home about. And hard to believe that that's for graded copies. So the sellers of both of these copies did not make any profit at all, selling it for the cost less than what it even cost to grade these books. Okay, so this was quite interesting comparing. So again, these were the lowest graded issues of the major titles on the CGC census from all 60s issues. Nothing overly special in any of these issues, but that's why I wanted to do this comparison to see if any of these are still good investments, just because obviously there are a lot of collectors who are building runs who do want copies of these books. But these are not the books that get any hype because they're just not major key books. They still have copies graded on the census, of course, but very few sales ever in the high grades. Let me know what you think of these. What did you learn from this study?